Ever wonder how a huge company like Apple or Toyota decides to drop billions of dollars on a brand new factory or some revolutionary new product? It's not just a gut feeling. There's a whole formal process behind it. So today, let's pull back the curtain on one of the key tools they use to make these massive, high-stakes decisions. We're going to break down a technique called the cash payback method. Now, it sounds kind of technical, but it's actually a really simple and surprisingly powerful way to get a quick read on whether a major investment is even worth the risk.
So here's what we've got on tap. First, we'll look at the big picture, how these massive investment decisions are actually made. Then we're going to zero in on why cash, not profit, but actual cash, is the only thing that really matters here. After that, we'll get our hands dirty and calculate a payback period ourselves. And finally, we'll take a step back and see where this tool is super useful and, just as importantly, where it falls short.
All right, let's dive into that big picture. When a company is about to bet millions, sometimes billions of dollars on a new project, it's not some snap decision made in a single meeting. No way. It's a formal, structured process, a journey that takes an idea from a simple proposal all the way to a fully funded reality.
It all kicks off with proposals coming in from different departments. Maybe the engineering team needs some new state-of-the-art machinery, or the marketing department wants to launch this huge new campaign. Well, all those ideas get funneled to a special committee that screens them to see which ones even make sense to consider. From there, the top company officers evaluate the finalists. And then, the final green light, that comes from the very top, the board of directors. They give the ultimate yes or no.
But it's not just a simple checklist. The final decision gets shaped by some very real-world stuff, like how much cash does the company actually have to spend? Do some of these projects depend on each other? And maybe the biggest one of all, what's the company's appetite for risk? These are the kinds of pressures that can make or break a proposal, no matter how good it looks on paper.
Okay, so you've got a project you're thinking about. To figure out if it's a good idea, you need data. But what kind of data? Well, this brings us to one of the most fundamental concepts in all of business. Cash is king. You see, for their day-to-day books, companies often use what's called accrual accounting. That just means if they make a sale in January, but the customer doesn't pay until March, they still record that revenue back in January. But for these big investment decisions, that's not what matters. What matters is the actual physical cash moving in and out of the bank. We call that cash flow. Because at the end of the day, you can't pay your employees or your suppliers with a promise of future money. You need cold, hard cash.
And that leads us to the single most important number for this whole analysis: net annual cash flow. The easiest way to think about it is like the project's take-home pay for the year. It's all the cash a project is expected to bring in minus all the cash it costs to keep it running. This is the number that tells us if an investment is really going to pay off.
But what if you don't have perfect, clean cash flow data? Happens all the time. Well, there's a pretty handy shortcut to estimate it. You can take the project's net income, its profit, and just add back the depreciation expense. So why add back depreciation? Well, because depreciation is just an accounting thing. It's an expense that lowers your profit on paper, but no actual cash ever leaves the building. So adding it back gets us much, much closer to the real cash a project is generating.
All right, we've got our key metric, net annual cash flow. Now it's time to put that number to work. Let's get into the real heart of this explainer, how to actually calculate the payback period.
At its core, this technique is beautiful because it's so simple. It's designed to answer one very straightforward question. How long is it going to take to get our initial investment back? That's it. It's all about the speed of return.
So let's start with the easiest possible scenario. Imagine we have a project that's expected to generate the exact same amount of cash year in and year out. Think of something predictable, like buying a small office building and renting it out on a long-term lease. The rent check is the same every year.
And for a project like that, the formula is just as simple as the idea itself. You just take the total cost of your investment and you divide it by the net cash flow you get each year. What you're left with is the exact number of years it'll take to earn your money back. Let's make this real. Let's say a company spends $500,000 on a new piece of factory equipment. They figure out that this new machine is going to save them $100,000 in cash every single year. Well, you take that $500,000 cost, you divide it by the $100,000 annual cash flow, and you get a payback period of exactly 5 years. See? Simple as that.
Okay, that was easy, right? But of course, the real world is almost never that neat and tidy. Most projects, most businesses, they don't generate the same exact cash flow every year. So what do you do then?
Well, when the cash flow is all over the place, we can't use that simple division formula. Instead, we just have to track it year by year. Let's say our investment this time is $300,000. As you can see here, after year 1, we've gotten back $80,000. After year 2, we bring in another $120,000, so our running total is now up to $200,000. Then, in year 3, we bring in another $100,000, and there it is.
Right at the end of year 3, our cumulative cash flow hits exactly $300,000, the precise amount we invested in the first place. So for this project, the payback period is 3 years flat. We literally just keep a running tally until we hit our break-even point.
So, now we know how to calculate this thing. But that brings us to maybe the most important question of all. What does this number actually tell us? Because the payback technique is a really useful tool, but, and this is important, it is not the complete answer.
The basic rule of thumb is pretty obvious. The faster you get your money back, the better, right? A project with a 2-year payback is usually seen as way less risky and more attractive than one with a 7-year payback. This makes it a fantastic tool for a first pass, for just screening a bunch of ideas. If you're a tech company launching a new phone, you need a short payback period, because that technology might be old news in 3 years. You've got to recoup your costs, and fast.
But, and this is a really, really big but, this technique has 2 massive blind spots. First, it completely ignores any money that comes in after the payback period. A project could be a dud for 3 years and then become a cash printing machine in year 4, but this method wouldn't care. Second, it ignores something called the time value of money. It treats a dollar you get 5 years from now as being worth the exact same as a dollar in your pocket today, which we all know isn't true thanks to things like inflation.
This quote really just sums it all up perfectly. Payback is about the timing of getting to break even. It's not, and it was never meant to be, a measure of how profitable a project will be over its entire life. So here's the bottom line. You want to use this tool for what it's really good at. It's a fantastic, super quick way to measure risk and liquidity. Basically, how long your cash is going to be tied up in a project. But it should never, ever be the only tool you use. It works best when you use it alongside other methods that actually look at total profitability. And that kind of brings us full circle. I'll leave you with this thought. Knowing when you'll get your money back is definitely important. But if you were sitting on that board of directors about to approve $1 billion investment, what else would you need to know? What about the total profit the project will make over its entire lifetime? Or how it fits into the company's grand strategy for the next decade? That's where the real tough decision-making begins.